Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to peek inside the mind of an AI and figure out how to teach it to actually reason, not just spit out answers. We're going to unpack a really powerful technique called chain of thought prompting.
So here's what we've got on tap. First, we'll look at why these AIs have such a hard time with reasoning. Then we'll get into what chain of thought actually is, see how it stacks up against the old way of doing things, check out the different tools you can use, and talk about the pros and cons. And we'll wrap up with a big question. Is this thing really thinking?
Okay, so let's kick things off with a problem I'm sure you've run into. You ask one of these super powerful AIs what feels like a simple question, and the answer it gives you is just wrong. Like the logic or the math is completely off. So what's going on here?
Well, it turns out that just throwing more power at an AI, just making it bigger, doesn't automatically make it better at solving problems that need, a few steps to figure out. Even these gigantic models can stumble over logic puzzles that a person would solve in a heartbeat.
And here's the real problem. They try to jump straight to the answer. It's like they're trying to make one giant intuitive leap. But that's super risky, right? If any part of that leap is off, the whole thing just falls apart and you get a bad answer.
So how do we get around this? Well, there's a technique called chain of thought prompting, and it completely changes the way we ask the AI to tackle a problem.
It's actually a pretty simple, almost elegant idea. We're just encouraging the model to break down a big problem into smaller, bite-sized pieces. Kind of like how we would do it. Instead of just asking for the final answer, we're asking it to show us how it gets there.
Honestly, the best analogy is straight out of math class. We're literally just asking the AI to show its work. And by doing that, we force it to follow a logical, step-by-step path instead of just taking one big, wild guess.
Okay, let's see what this actually looks like. Because the difference between a normal prompt and a chain of thought prompt, it can be, well, night and day.
So, with a standard prompt, you ask a question and you just get an answer. Poof, that's it. How did it get there? Who knows? It's a total black box. But with chain of thought, we're basically asking the AI to crack open that box and show us the exact steps it took.
And this example just illustrates it perfectly. So on the left, a standard prompt asks this simple Apple question, and the model just jumps to a completely wrong answer. 27. No idea where that came from. But now look at the right. We tell it to think step by step. And look what happens. It says, okay, cafeteria had 23 apples, used 20, that leaves 3. Then they bought 6 more, so 3 plus 6 is 9. Boom, the right answer. All because it followed a logical chain of thought.
All right, so now that we see why this is so powerful, let's talk about the different ways you can actually use it. There's a bit of a toolkit here.
So you basically got 3 main flavors. The simplest is called zero shot. It takes almost no effort from you. It's just a simple phrase. Then you've got few shot, which is a bit more work because you have to give it a few examples to learn from, but the results are way more reliable. And then there's auto CoT, which is this really cool hybrid that gets the computer to generate its own examples, so you get great results without all the manual effort.
And for that zero-shot method, it can be as simple as adding this one little phrase. Just telling it, let's think step by step, can be enough to kickstart this whole reasoning process in a big enough model. It's amazing how such a simple key can unlock so much logical capability.
Okay, so what are the big wins here? What are the main benefits of using this? And, maybe more importantly, where does it fall short?
The benefits are, well, they're huge, and they're really practical. First, your accuracy on tough problems shoots way up. Second, the AI's thinking becomes totally transparent. You can see how it got to an answer, which means you can actually trust it. And maybe the best part, it makes debugging a breeze. If it gets something wrong, you can look at its work and see exactly where the logic went off the rails. That's a game changer.
But, and this is a big but, it's not a silver bullet. Chain of thought prompting isn't magic, and there's one really big catch that you have to know about.
And here's that catch. This comes from some fascinating research. It turns out that chain of thought is what they call an emergent ability. What does that mean? It means it only starts to work once the AI models get huge. Look at these graphs here. The bottom axis is the size of the model, measured in billions of parameters. And you can see that blue line, the one for chain of thought. It only really starts to pull ahead of the black line way over on the right, once you get past about 100 billion parameters. So you need a massive model for this trick to work.
The fact that this works so well, but only on these giant models, leads us to a really deep, almost philosophical question about what's really going on under the hood.
You see, just because the AI's output looks like a human thinking something through step by step, that doesn't prove it's actually reasoning the way we do. It might just be an incredibly sophisticated imitation. A really, really good one for sure. But we still don't know if it truly understands.
So here's the bottom line. Chain of thought prompting definitely gives us a more accurate, more reliable, and way more transparent AI. But it leaves us with this huge question to chew on. As we teach these machines to show their work, are we actually teaching them how to think, or are we just teaching them to be perfect mimics of what thinking looks like? That's the question I'll leave you with.